Hi there, this is David Ingleby for Dingo servo mounts. This is a step-by-step instruction for putting together a dual signal mount. You will need, before you start, my trusty folding block. You will need a kit, a dual signal kit. You will need a small posi drive screwdriver. You will need a servo tester and little battery pack for setting up the servos, and you will need to download the instructions from our download page. Once you've got all these, and one more thing, you will need two 9G servos. These are Tower Pros. You can use the Hobby King HK15178s or anything similar. Any of the 9G servos should work in this unit. Once you've got all that together, it's quite good to go through the instruction sheet until you get to the last page, which is the kit of parts, and make sure that you have all the parts that you are needing for this particular build. Now, you may well know that our dual signal mount, in fact all our signal mounts, come with two options, either a belt and braces option or a magnetic option. If you're going to use the magnetic option, then on the inside at the back of the packet where it says magnets, you'll find the two magnets stuck onto the paper. I'm not going to use those today, but they will be on the back of your kit insert. Now, also, if you're going to use the magnetic option, you need to take out these two sliders, put them on a piece of greaseproof paper, and then with a drop of super glue put the magnets into these two holes before you do anything else, and let that set up so that you will have that in place when you need it. Right, so let's begin. The first thing we need to do is to fold the main frame. That's quite easy to do. We can fold this either a left hand or a right hand, depending on whether you want the signals on this side or on that side. So you need to make that choice before you actually start folding. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that we're going to set it up with the signals on this side. So that means that that top piece will bend down that way. So I put that on the wooden block, hold it firmly and push down to fold that over. You can then just make sure that that is at 90 degrees just by tweaking it. There we go, we have that at 90 degrees. This piece is still standing up, so we need to fold that down. So put that on there and fold that down the other way. And the same with this piece over here. So you now have a frame that looks like that. Now you can bring this all the way up to 90 degrees so that it all fits together very well once we start putting it together. Just remember, as always, that you can only fold aluminium once. If you try and fold it back again, it will probably snap off. And then you'll have to phone me up and ask me for another frame. Okay, that's the frame done. Now we'll start with the servo at the back. For the back servo, you will need these two spacers and your servo motor and the two longer screws. These two, you can see that, that's an M2x10 screw. We start by putting the screw through the back of the servo. It's always best to use the one next to the wires first, because that's the most awkward one to get in. Put it through there, through the two spacers, and then it goes into the bottom of the frame, so into that side of the frame. Now you will see that the motor is on that side, and with a small screwdriver you can then, screw one screw in gently, other screw in the other side, pop that through, it goes all the way in, tighten them up, there we go, and that's the way it should be. So the spindle is in the opposite side from this slot in the frame. Right, now we need to center the servo. Once again, we put on our trusty servo tester and set it to a center position there. And then once we've got that in the central position, we can put this pin on in that position with its little screw and tighten it up. There we go, and we can check that it works. That's all working. Excellent. Now in your two arms here, you will see that one has one little hole at the top and one has two little holes at the top. The one we need first is the one with two holes. What I did make a mistake with is that I turned these up a little bit too much. Right, two. Right, the one with the two holes, you put that into the top there, slide it all the way in, and then drop it back into this bottom section here. Now we can put a drive screw into the second hole, I would say probably the second hole from the center of the spindle. These little drive screws are a little fiddly. I tend to put them on the end of the screwdriver and then just slot them in to the hole like that. Oops, and there it goes on the floor. These little screws are a little fiddly, but if you get it on the end of the screwdriver and very carefully tighten it up, it will go in quite easily. Don't screw it in too far because you don't want it to foul in the on the motor frame over there. Don't want it to foul there, but put it in far enough to get a good bite. Right, that's the first one in. Now we take the second motor. And that goes straight into the hole at the back. And again with the two screws. These will be the two shorter screws, the M2x6. And one screw in. Yeah. It's centered. Just check it's a good servo. Yeah, it's a good one. And once it's centered, we put the actuator on there. Make sure it's level, horizontal, as close as we can get it to horizontal. And there we go, like that. Little screw, and these little screws are have a mind of their own, so be very careful while you're putting them in that you don't lose those, especially if you've got a shaggy carpet like I've got in this room. It's not a good thing. Right, that one's in. Then we need to put the second slider in, and now we can fold these arms up so that they are at 90 degrees. Just a little tweak here and there, and everything should all come together. There we go. Alright, once again a little drive screw into the second hole of the unit there. There we go. Tighten it up, not too tight so it doesn't go right through to there, but it's all good. Okay, now we can test that the units work. Take it off there, and there we go, the unit works, and the same with the bottom one. Put that one on, the bottom one works. Excellent. So that's all we need to do with the servos. That can be disconnected and put to one side. Now it's a question of putting the pins in. These, whoops, there you go, these little black screws, sometimes they're white, depends on the kit you've got, will come through the back of the hole there, and the nut goes on the top that holds that together. I'm not going to do that right now because you don't need to see me do that. I'm sure you can figure that out. You will notice that in these little screws there is a very small hole just under the head, and that is where your, there you go, that's where your wire goes through, and then when that comes into the hole under there, and then the nut goes on and that locks that in place. Now the other thing we do have in this kit, you may or may not need it, is a guide, which is this little white goodie here, and there is a screw there. That guide goes, if you can, I don't know if you can see, there's two holes, one there, one there. The one closest to the edge goes on the outside, and that fits in there like that, and it gets tightened up. You need to do this once your wires are in place. There's just a guide to keep them running. So this one will run through that hole, and this one will run through that hole. It's quite useful, especially if you're using the magnetic option to keep them in place. If you're using just the belt and braces option like this, you probably don't need to use that. But it just gives you a little bit of a guide, and that will make life a little bit easier. And that, as they say in the classics, is that. One dual signal mount built and put together. All you need to do now is to fit it under the layout. Those two holes there, I would use the slot first and then the second hole with the two fixing screws, which are these little babies here. That'll fix it up to the bottom of the baseboard, and then it's just a question of adjusting the travel and everything to make your signal work well. As always with any mount, when you first set it up, make sure that the servos are in the central position before you hook everything up, and make sure that your software is on, your firmware rather, the control board is on and switched on and in a zero position. And then once that's all in place, then only hook up your signals and then move them as you need to, set the limits, etc. I hope that makes sense. Have some fun modelling our dual signal mount. Thank you.